will shut down many of our automotive jobs in central Canada. It is another Liberal disaster.
They've been caught again. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, we've got the Liberals caught doing more bad things in Canada. Whether it's immigration, whether it's the EV mandates, the Liberals are making life worse in Canada. We're going to break down this whole EV mandate situation here, why we shouldn't be mandating EVs and why they operate better in places like Norway. We also have some new polling data. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, we've got a poll from CTV. It says percentage of Canadians who see the U.S. as a top threat. So what it's talking about here is 55% of Canadians still say the U.S. remains this country's most important ally. It also says 59% of people now see the U.S. as a threat, up from 20% in a 2019 poll. And this is all wrapped up with the cradling arms of immigration being the linchpin problem in this country that's affecting everything, including crime, the housing crisis, all of it. This one coming from Blacklock's reporter, it says, Immigration Canada admits it never did comprehensive security screenings of 2 suspected Egyptian terror lords despite public assurances of then Minister Mark Miller. This is unbelievable stuff. So it goes on to talk about the terror lords that were plotting that attack in Toronto. Egyptian national Ahmed El Didi, 63 years old, and his adult son Mustafa, 27, of Scarborough, Ontario, were arrested last July 28th by the RCMP on suspicion of plotting a serious bad times event in an undisclosed Toronto location. According to the police, the pair remained in custody pending a 2026 trial of charges of terror lord activity, conspiracy to do bad things to people, possession of pew-pews and bang-bangs and boom-booms, and aggravated bad times. Minister Miller, in testimony, goes on to say, "We are confident in our security screening," he said. This guy's an absolute buffoon. Like, he let down Canada. He let down everyone. Goes on to say, El Didi Sr. in 2018 received a work permit without comprehensive security screening 7 months after landing in Toronto. And then he was granted citizenship in May of 2024. A month later, Canadian agents learned El Didi Sr. had appeared in a 2015 ISIS doing bad things to people video. This is unfathomable. This is inexcusable. Mark Miller should be in jail for this. This is not something to just sweep under the rug. There needs to be criminal punishment for negligence and endangering Canadian lives with this. Allowing these people to come into our country affects real people's lives, Mark. This isn't some fun and games. This isn't just squeezing tax dollars and ripping us off. This affects people's lives because there's other people who are not screened who have taken out other people, have lost family members because of this. It's just sad because they'll go to sleep at night without a care in the world, not caring at all what they've done.
A lot of people who still drive gas-powered cars, something the Liberal government wants to ban. I just finished a tour of many amazing Alberta communities from Drumheller, Hanna, Donalda, Killam, Statler, and many more, where distances are long and weather is often very cold, which means that a electric car is simply not practical. You need a truck. Obviously.
That's exactly it. So if we look at this comment, it says Norway, 97% of vehicles sold last year were EVs. Big country, pretty cold there. It's hard to take you serious when you constantly misrepresent the truth. The problem with a lot of Liberal voters, when you know a little bit, then you get arrogant and you think you know everything about a topic, when in reality, if you don't know everything about a topic, then you look like an absolute buffoon. Norway did in fact sell 97% of EVs last year. They're subsidized by their oil money. They have a sovereign wealth fund, which has made Norway very rich. They have smart people there who invested their oil money wisely. But the main thing to look at with Norway, if we look at how big Canada is, and if we go over to Norway, this country spans this whole region here, but most of the population lives right down here. Now, if we look how big this country is, now look at Canada. Canada is 26 times bigger than Norway. And not only that, Canada is a lot colder than Norway. Just as Pierre Poilievre just stated, if we take a look at this is the flow of ocean currents. You're seeing warm gets pushed up over into Norway and cold gets pushed through Canada. Now, this matters because when you have a bonehead comment like this that's uneducated, saying big country, pretty cold there, once again, Canada 26 times bigger than Norway, pretty cold there because of the warm ocean currents. Norway is actually quite mild, even though it's more northern than a lot of Canada. We see this with temperature data. So this here is for the town of Trondheim. For the winter months, it only gets down to -5 and upwards of 15 degrees. So it's a very mild country. And same with Tromsø, same thing, -10, Bodo, -5. I'm not going to try to say that one. -5, -5. Furthermore, let's look right in winter in January. You can see average temperature right here, -5 in the country, -5. Average max is -2.8 and the low is -7.5. You can see this on this chart here, the average temperatures per month. So it's -5 in January, and that's the lowest, right? It goes up to -4. Then by March, it's already 0. April, it's 5 degrees, and then June, July, 17, August, 16, etc. It's a very mild climate, which works well for EVs. It's not so cold that those EVs are going to lose a lot of battery. For this -5 temperature, EVs in Norway are going to lose about 15% of their battery. In Canada, though, the average temperature is -15, and a lot of places are a lot worse than that. At -15, Canadians would be losing 35% of their battery life. See, that's a problem when people make comments like this and they don't research anything.
To do a lot of the work that farmers and oil and gas workers do, and that work is essential to the existence of our country. We need that work to go on. But Mark Carney and the Liberals plan to ban that work effectively by banning your gas and diesel-powered vehicle.
Like mentioning big country, most people in Norway live in Oslo, Bergen, or any of the other towns and cities around here. In the south, by the way, Bergen's average temperature is around 0 degrees in January. It doesn't even get to freezing. So if you were to drive from Bergen to Oslo, this is a 6-hour drive. This is basically across the entire country. And once again, most people living down here. So most people in this country are not driving more than a couple hours at most. If they're, say, a long-haul trucker, this is their biggest drive. Now, sure, there's going to be some communities, there's one road that goes all the way up here, but most of the population does not live up here. These are just simple facts why forcing EVs on Canadians is a dumb idea. And on top of that, people in Norway don't have to buy an EV. They can still buy gas-powered vehicles. They're not mandated to buy them. That's the difference. This is being forced upon us because Mark Carney and all his cronies are lining up profits for Brookfield. So I've now updated this with car icons on all the EV-related ones. I should note too, so Brookfield, everything Brookfield is in this dark yellow. This light yellow are companies they own or companies they're invested with. So quick refresher, as I've showed some of these, I've added some new ones. We've got Enercare, which does heat pumps and EV charging stations. We've got Shoals Technology. This one does charge as a service solution for EV charging infrastructure. We've got EV Passport and Brookfield Partnership. This is a strategic partnership. Brookfield Properties selected EV Passport, a US-based EV charging infrastructure as a service provider to integrate level 2 charging stations across its commercial and multifamily real estate portfolio. Here's EV Passport's own website. Here's Brookfield Properties on here. You don't have to believe me. It's all here. It's funny. I see liberal comments in my comment section trying to say that either I make stuff up or nothing I'm saying is credible. It's like, it's right here. You don't have to trust me. That's why I put the sources on here. Brookfield Properties honed in on their mission to provide an EV charging solution to residents in pursuit of a program, yada, yada, yada. This says here for the Bay Area of California, the nation's fastest growing EV network. Brookfield did not hesitate to get into a partnership with them. They also have Brookfield Properties, this EV charging stations in Brookfield Place in Toronto. Brookfield has been thinking about this for a long time. As it says here, in 2018, we doubled the number of charging stations, providing over 150 stations across 17 properties. This was posted 5 years ago. They've been working out this long-term play for a long time. Here's a charging map. Once again, we're not going to get into all the nitty-gritty of this, but I mean, every single one of these charging stations is essentially a little ATM to make money off of. We've got this one here, just in April 2025, acquisition of Engie's EV business, Australia and New Zealand. EVSE majority owned 60% by IntelliHub, a Brookfield plus Pacific Equity Partners JV, completed the purchase of Engie's EV fast charging operations in New Zealand and Australia. I should note I just bought a domain for this and I upgraded my account to a paid account, which is mandatory for me to be able to share it with all you guys. So that will be coming soon. And if you click on any one of these articles, there's this little button here which says source, and that goes to the source article. IntelliHub Group, NG Seal, Milestone Commercial Agreements. And here's another source coming from Financial Review. Dealmakers at Buyout Pacific Equity Partners and their counterparts in North America juggernaut Brookfield agree that electric vehicle charging infrastructure is the next big thing, and they're riding shotgun with the $3 billion smart meter business IntelliHub to play the thematic. So it goes on to say here, Australia and New Zealand has over 200 chargers. Brookfield is betting on this worldwide, but they need to start forcing it into some countries, like countries they have control over, aka Canada with Mark Carney.
Next year, they say that 20% of all the vehicles on the lot at the dealership have to be electric, rising to 100% by 2035, less than a decade from now. This is going to be a massive cost increase and a massive convenience decrease. It is going to be a major hit to the quality of life of our people. It will shut down many of our automotive jobs in central Canada. It is another Liberal disaster, and that is why Conservatives are leading the charge to fight against the Liberal ban on your gas-powered vehicle. We want you to have total freedom of choice, lower prices. We want to put you back in the driver's seat. If you agree, sign on the dotted line and join the cause.
So in just this one section here, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different EV companies. But not only that, there's one more down here. This one, CDPQ plus Brookfield owned Claros battery manufacturer. So joint owned by Brookfield and CDPQ raised $5 billion through a bond and loan deal in early 2025. These aren't old deals. These are all new deals. This recapitalization resulted in substantial $4.5 billion dividend for Brookfield. So CDPQ is this Caisse de Dépôt Placement du Québec I mentioned before on the channel. They co-bought this with Brookfield. This CDPQ sold their $850 million stake in Colonial Pipeline to Brookfield, which Brookfield bought for $9 billion, this being the longest pipeline in America. And this same CDPQ, as you see here, is invested in all these companies, including Mark Carney's own GFANZ Glasgow Finance for Net Zero. This one, Carney's been wrapped up with these guys for a long time. And as you follow this line down here, this goes directly to Marc-Andre Blanchard. This is now Mark Carney's chief of staff. He just brought him in just recently, and you can see here is executive president and head of CDPQ Global. These guys are all interwoven. They have an agenda and a plan they're pushing forward. They're setting up little systems in their companies and setting up deals and it all pushing it towards one thing, and that's making money off of Brookfield and this whole EV system. But for it to work, they have to force us to buy these electric vehicles, which don't work in Canada because our country is 26 times bigger than Norway and our temperature is on average 10 to 15 to 20 degrees colder depending on what region, minus 25 in Whitehorse in January as opposed to minus 5 degrees in Norway. So people like this Michael guy really should do some research before leaving comments like this because you just look like a buffoon. So with all that in mind, all the drawbacks, the average Canadian, depending where you're living, getting minus 35% battery life for an EV in Canada. Most Canadians who own EVs aren't driving long distances. They're using them back and forth in town, and that's a great place to use them because you save money. But if you're having to do long-haul trucking, if you're having to go install windows in some rural property or servicing septic tanks or hauling lumber or moving cattle, you don't want an EV because you're going to run out of power. For that reason, we're seeing demand in Canada drop, but worldwide in places like China, the demand is increasing.
The drive to increase electric vehicle sales across North America is hitting a major bump in the road.
Sales in Canada have collapsed.
This week, automakers pushed Canada to scrap standards that would require 20% of new cars sold next year to be electric or hybrid. Right now, that number is just 9%. Meanwhile, Cpac is softening its EV sales requirements, now putting hybrid vehicles on par with full electric vehicles.
By allowing more credits for plug-in hybrids, yes, that's a positive step. It doesn't solve the problem.
It comes as the United States is slowing down on EVs.
Hybrids are much better. You get a lot of the benefits without all the extra costs, all the extra risks of EVs. I mean, we've got EVs now. If they're damaged, they can't go on ferries from Vancouver Island back to the mainland because they're just a fire hazard. They're a major risk. I mean, that's why you see hybrids are so popular. They save a lot on gas. They offer short range of electric driving, but that's not what Brookfield will make money on. That's why that's not the push.
Comes as the United States is slowing down on EVs. Donald Trump's newly signed Big Beautiful Bill ends tax credits for EV purchases and drops subsidies for battery companies. But as electrification slows in North America, around the world it's ramping up. Last year, 1 in every 5 cars sold globally was an EV, and sales jumped 35% in the first quarter of this year.
When the entire Canadian auto industry is producing somewhere around 1.5 million units, that's not enough to withstand a global marketplace that runs into the hundreds of millions per year.
China is the biggest exporter of electric vehicles and spends hundreds of billions of dollars to subsidize its industry. Currently, Canadian automakers are protected from Chinese competition by tariffs that roughly double the cost for Canadian buyers.
So something to note about China is they brought in EVs because their pollution is so bad, they have no environmental regulations, and they've been running their country like that for years and years and decades to the point where they had to do something. The air was causing lung problems. People couldn't breathe. So they forced EVs there. It's causing a bunch of other problems because EVs aren't great in the winter, the battery life, all that kind of stuff. But they're doing that to try to fix their pollution problem. We don't have that same problem in Canada. We don't have their very lax, loose environmental regulations. We don't have their population. We're talking 1.3 billion people versus 40 million spread over a giant landmass. So we shouldn't be following China. They're doing that for different reasons, and they're still ending up with the same problems. They're just trying to fix a different problem.
But some argue those tariffs should be lower.
They're good cars, they're affordable cars, and bringing in that competition is going to make our domestic automotive manufacturers drive down costs as well.
The auto industry is calling for Canada to bolster the country's electric supply chain and better the chances of consumers buying Canadian.
We haven't invested in our strengths, which is all the critical minerals that go into batteries are here.
The Canadian government hasn't said whether or not it plans to drop the standard, which takes effect next year and would see all cars sold from 2035 on be hybrids or electrics. The auto industry says it will have to because they simply won't hit that target.
You would think the Liberals would want those Chinese EVs coming in because they want to save the planet. It's all about being eco and green, but really they can't make money off those Chinese EVs. That's why they put in all the programs here, and they're forcing everything here because they can make money off of it. Whether it's charging stations, whether it's investments in certain companies, the Liberals have lined this up to pocket the cash. It's not about the environment. It never was. Government rebates go down, sales go down. If you need an 8-year loan to buy a car, you can't afford it. That includes gas cars. Needs 0% tariffs. EV mandates will do far more damage to Canadian auto industry than Trump tariffs. Isn't that the truth there? It was tried in Europe and brought massive layoffs in the auto sector. Toyota was right all along. It's just sad. One of the big nation building projects we already have was the auto industry, and it's getting slammed by tariffs. We have the Liberals forcing EVs on us that are all going bankrupt or moving to America or shutting down production at a point where we just really need a win, a nation building project to come up and just to show a path of prosperity. What you're about to hear is a caller ripping David Eby a new one, blasting him on the BC Ferries contract going to China. It's hard to hear between the echo and the low voice, but that's what he's asking.
One company that's building these BC ferries, the provincial government obviously supports BC ferries as well, which has purchased these vessels through the Chinese company. What's the reaction of people who continue to be upset and concerned about the fact that it is a Chinese company building these 40 vessels?
Well, Rob, we're certainly when I heard, I wasn't pleased with the fact that the contract was going to China. I wasn't happy with the fact that no Canadian company bid on this contract. We've made good progress on shipbuilding in this province. As I've been premier, there's 39% more people working in shipbuilding specifically in this province. We dedicated $25 million to grow the sector that was matched by private sector investment that resulted in the creation of 500 jobs in shipbuilding in the province. And I believe there's an opportunity for us to work with the federal government to ensure that the next round of ferries is Canadian built.
This is a disgrace, dude. The reason why C-SPAN or any of the Canadian shipbuilders didn't put in a bid for those ferries is they knew they couldn't compete with the Chinese companies because they were going to undercut them, and they're funded by the CCP. And our government did not step up to do what's right for Canadians and make this a Canadian contract. He has no problem sending this over to his masters in China. I mean, this guy's advisor, Ding Guo, is a part of the United Front Work Department, which is an arm of the Chinese Communist Party. This guy's compromised.
But the challenge that we have is an unequal ferry system where users in Atlantic Canada are heavily subsidized at a rate of 300 to 1 compared to users of the BC ferry system. And I certainly hope that's part of the federal conversation.
Look at his defeated body language here. This guy knows he's absolutely failed British Columbians. Just an absolute failure of a leader. We're the people at BC Ferries who made the decision. Nice try, Eby. I doubt the feds would finance it without a discussion with you. I smell another big fib by Eby. The federal government provided the funding for this. This has already come out. They provided that funding through the infrastructure bank to fund these Chinese ferries. So the government is complicit in this too.